After all the sporting action, we welcome you back as I share with you my blunt thoughts for today. And I've titled it, Losing from Both Ends, Our Natural Resources in Crisis and Our Economy in Tatters. Let me take you back in time today, far back in time to AD 536. If you're a scholar of history or science, you may have heard of the Latin term annus horribilis, literally meaning horrible year. From the research done by scientists, it is said that AD 536 was the coldest year in the last 2,300 years, which made the winter season a survival season for most cultures. Contemporary scholars also tell us that it is not only the fact that it was a really cold winter that made it a bad year, but also many strange events where the climate changed all of a sudden. Some scholars have noted that they saw heavy snow in China during the peak period of summer. Besides, the Chinese culture not being used to very cold weather, the main problem was that most crops were killed due to the harsh climate, therefore creating a famine. This did not only happen in China, but in many other parts of the world where snow never settled. Some scientists argue that this was due to the sun not offering the same level of heat during that particular year. Many periods were recorded where South America would suffer from 3 long months of heavy rain, followed by months of drought. This would once again affect the agriculture within the continent, not only killing the main source of the economy, but also creating a famine. What impacted agriculture and the well-being of humans during this year was the multiple volcanic eruptions in the northern hemisphere of the globe. This led to the engulfment in darkness of half of the world due to a massive dark cloud that didn't allow the sun's heat to reach the Earth's ground, therefore lowering temperatures. This also explains why this was the coldest year. Besides not having much natural heat, agriculture once again suffered enormously due to the lack of sunlight, which was vital to the growth of plants. Just imagine not being able to discern between night and day as it was always dark. And all this while, starving to death and freezing cold. This darkness lasted 18 months, so most of the year, AD 536, was lived in complete obscurity. Around the same time, though not in the same year, that is about 541 AD to 549 AD, the bubonic plague caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestis also broke out through transmission from rats to humans and was carried on ships to the rest of the world. In less than a year, the pandemic had spread worldwide, covering most of Europe, Asia, North Africa, and the East. Scientists estimate that almost 50% of the world's population was wiped out in the 9 years the pandemic took place. I could go on and on about the year 536, considering the worst year in history. But let me cap it off here. I'm sure you get my drift, right? In this Fourth Republic, and I'm open to contestation on this year, 2022, could very well be our own annus horribilis, a year of extremely bad events, or to be more exact, a horrible year. But just how bad is a horrible year? It depends on whom you're talking to. Queen Elizabeth II of blessed memory, for example, used this expression in a speech in 1992 to describe that year when there was a serious fire at Windsor Castle, the Princess Royale got divorced, the Duke of York separated from his wife, and the Prince of Wales had marital problems. That was a horrible year for her. For us here in Ghana, I suppose we are more concerned about the bread and butter matters that affect our daily lives, which, upon reflection, makes me believe that 2022 has in fact been a horrible year for Ghanaians, if not the worst in our Fourth Republican history. Yes, we've had to deal with the global crises of COVID-19 and the Russo-Ukrainian war. But we are not alone in this enterprise. So why do we find ourselves on the cusp of becoming, if we've not already become, that is, another Sri Lanka, when even our much poorer neighbors are hale, hearty, and living appreciably well, even in the eye of the storm? From the highest fuel prices I have witnessed in my life here in Ghana, to some of the worst prices I have seen for food and drink and everything in between, to the imposition of the e-levy against the popular will of the people, to the abysmal management of our economy, which is fast crumbling. This indeed has been a horrible year. I shall get down to the economic data a little later, but let me just say this. It is said that he who pays the piper calls the tune. Ghanaians, through their votes, paid the piper, this NPP administration. Yet when we called the tune, expressing our opposition to the e-levy, the piper failed to play the tune. The piper wasn't playing fair, and not just that in this instance alone. So we had to show the piper where power lay, and we did, considering the pathetic showing of that levy. I ask, Why heap misery upon an already suffering people? Why must it come down to this? Before we get into the economy, though, let's take a quick look at our agriculture and how it's been impacted by Galamsey. Our Lands and Natural Resources Minister is on record to have said that small-scale mining contributes 40% of our revenue from gold extraction. I ask, how much exactly is that? And at what cost to our environment? How come a few years ago we stayed such mining activities and still sold more ounces of gold than we had for decades? Our waters today are looking very colorful, like something out of the Milky Way galaxy in which our solar system can be found. From different shades of beige to brown, we have turned our cherished bodies, water bodies, into pools of death. Behold, Ghana, for your water bodies, at least what has become of them. Look at them. Look at the Totoa stream, Afu Afu. Look at the Amoya. Look at the Ankobra. Look at the River Bia. Look at the Tano, the Ngui, the River Ofin, the River Bonsa. Just look at them. We've been told that even if we stopped dabbling in Galamsey today and brought all those activities to a grinding halt, it will take about 100 years to restore our water bodies to anything close to what they were before. Do you see why it was highly irresponsible for the Agric Minister to talk about, quote, just 2% of our cocoa farmland that has been lost to Galamsey, and that 2% was nothing? That, coupled with the chemical issues of mercury and cyanide contamination and other long-standing problems like farmers selling off cocoa land for rubber tree planting and other cash crop production for fast money, means we are looking at fast dwindling levels of production. In simple terms, we could slip badly and lose not just our spot, but our reputation as producing the best quality cocoa worldwide. But do our misleaders care? Have they shown the leadership we need in this respect? Take another look at these water bodies and give me an answer. Contemplate the unprecedented damage to our landscape through illegal mining activities in which some members of the ruling administration have been found complicit. And I'm not just talking about now, I'm talking about all that was revealed through the Anas expose on the likes of Charles Bissu, then later the Ekoewusi saga, among many others. But before any proper investigations could be conducted, didn't the system rush to clear them and allow them to enjoy their booty? The Aisha Huang case itself is a critical example, especially when her disappearance or purported deportation, which our president said he wasn't even certain of, was managed or stage managed in the way it was, with political elements telling us, the masses, she had stolen from, that we stood to gain nothing through her incarceration. Well, we emboldened her, and now she's back, and we're putting on a show to save face. If we had acted the first time and shown good faith, we would have no need to save face, Mr. President. Akonta Mining, owned by your party's Ashanti Regional Chairman, has been singled out for blame. But what has your administration done to punish him personally? Nothing. His outfit engaged in criminality by operating without a license in a restricted area, a forest reserve of all places. But have the long arms of the law caught up with him? No. Will they ever do so? I doubt it. But wait, lest I forget. Even Sir John willed part of the Achimota Forest, another forest reserve, to his family members. Add Etiwa, and I can say I guess the MPP has quite an interest in the forest reserves, doesn't it? As it is, Mr. President, your administration has failed to rein in those destroying our land and water bodies in this manner, and in many other respects, which is why we are where we are today. Our cocoa and coffee risk being banned. Also considering the fact that cocoa production is based on land size, Indonesia, and I'll show you shortly, could soon overtake us on the global production log. Add that to the fact that cyanide and mercury are polluting our land and water resources because of Galamsey. And we could also lose out on producing the world's highest quality cocoa beans. And all because our leaders failed to lead, failed to act. Hold on for me. In recent times, Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah made it clear when he put up this post on Twitter. In Europe, there is a new legislation that could soon make Ghanaian cocoa and coffee unexportable to many international markets. Earlier this week in Brussels, I chaired a two-day forum, The Future of Ghanaian Cocoa and Coffee Value Chains in the Face of this new EU legislation. There's more to this legislation, but of course, definitely. We want more cocoa, and we are supporting Ghana and the Ivory Coast to produce cocoa and other commodities in a socially and environmentally sustainable manner. That is the EU ambassador to Ghana. That is what they are saying. Is it sustainable? Are you producing it in ways that will actually stick to international standards? And with cyanide and mercury in there, we are on a very slippery slope. But look at this. Why I feel the Agric Minister goofed. The Ivory Coast is here. 2.2 million tons is what they produce, according to data. Ghana is at 800,000, but look at Indonesia, 739,483. We can forget Nigeria and Ecuador. It means that if we keep slipping the way we are doing, we are soon going to lose out. Soon. Sooner rather than later. That is why when the Agric Minister made the comment about only 2%, I found it egregious. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, Ghana for, they actually do. Let's focus on the economy now. The World Bank now says our debt to GDP is set to hit 104.6% by end of year. That puts us in very ignominious company. We're rubbing shoulders with countries like Eritrea, Sudan, Cape Verde, and Mozambique. Can you even imagine that? This, Ghana for, is the very first time we find ourselves in this territory where our debt to GDP is crossing 100%. It also means our economy is facing severe debt distress, as is evinced by the Fitch and Moody's downgrades we have seen recently. The World Bank blames our central bank, which we would have counted on to see the writing on the wall and act quickly to protect us, for looking on till inflation skyrocketed before tweaking our monetary policy rates. Even worse, our currency, the Ghana cedi, has slumped a whopping 60% this year alone. 60%! For context, the Ghana cedi had lost just about 2% of its value around this time last year. The cedi, Ghana for, remains the worst performing currency in Africa, the second worst performing currency in the world. How do we get out of this foul rut? What do we do? Where do we turn? What should be our stance and our posturing? Definitely not one of parrying blame, but of accepting responsibility and of being practical, of being honest with the people and humbly engaging so we can avert even worse. After all, is anyone happy when things go bad? It affects us all, thick, thin, short, tall, rich, poor, journalist, the ordinary man on the street. We, all of us, need our hands to be on deck to remedy the situation, I agree. But first, our misleaders must act like leaders and show true leadership. Without that, God help us, but this could be far worse than anything we've ever known. Before I cap off my blunt thoughts today, this is the true state of our economy. This is the debt to GDP ratio by end of year, as projected by the World Bank. Eritrea, 234.90%. Sudan, 183.80%. Cape Verde, 147.7%. Ghana, 104.6%. Mozambique, 102.6%. We have no business being here. And the economists will tell you we shouldn't even be in this range. Then, you look at the sub-Saharan African countries with projected debt to GDP above 100%. According to the World Bank, in Ghana, the central bank delayed interest rate hikes until inflation soared from 13.9% in January 2022, when we were complaining, to 19.4% in March, followed by a massive depreciation of the cedi. And that's why it is laying the blame squarely at the doorstep of the central bank. And this has been made mention of. When you look at this, again, the worst performing currencies, you would see, comparatively, the CFA franc has lost 13.3%. Malawi, 25.4%. Sudan, 28.6%. South Sudan, 50.8%. Ghana, in our ignominious position, with 60%. Then you look at the cedi to dollar depreciation. In 2017, 4.9%, went up in 2018, hit 15.7%, the highest we had seen in 2019. Then 2020, 3.9%, 2021, 4%, and then, look at that, a whopping 60% in 2022. But just to wrap the conversation, unsustainable debt, what does it mean to the IMF? In cases where a country's debt is assessed as unsustainable, the IMF is precluded, forbidden, from providing financing unless the member takes steps to restore debt sustainability, including by seeking a debt restructuring from its creditors. This is where we are, because we are right on the cusp, the precipice, the verge of debt unsustainability. This is where we are. But most of all, as I end, voices of conscience must speak up about these matters, loud and clear, so our leaders too will wake up from their slumber, just as some of us have, lest disaster overtake us. Like Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said in his speech on Independence Day, "We have awakened. We will not sleep anymore. Today, from now on, there is a new African in the world. Today, from now on, let there be a new Ghanaian mindset, a new kind of leadership mentality, a new kind of patriotism, that love for God and country, to propel our motherland to the heights she deserves to be at. Ghana deserves much better. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. These are my blunt thoughts served to you raw, unedited, undiluted. God richly bless Ghana and make her great and strong.